Papa Nicholas Coffee, roasted fresh daily in Batavia, Illinois.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Lightfoot and Preckwinkle. That's the runoff to April 2nd. They hit the campaign trail yesterday. Tony Preckwinkle, I understand, is going to have a hit up on television today on Lori Lightfoot. We'll effort that commercial as soon as it airs.
What's saying that she's not ready for the job because of her lack of experience in government?
No, it's not really an experience play. It's, what kind of change sort of, since Lori Lightfoot's incantation on election night was, this is what change looks like. They sort of go after trying to define Lori Lightfoot, what kind of change, and go through, mischaracterizing, based on what I understand, some aspects of her legal career, involvement she had with initiatives like Fair Map, where they call that like, they term this like an effort to keep Republicans in power. I'm sorry, Republicans in power of what? Are we talking about Illinois? Are we talking about
Chicago? Please.
Like those Fair Map efforts that were bipartisan efforts, but were really spearheaded by Democrats. So there's some mischaracterizations. We'll go through it when we get the spot. But anyway, the point is that Preckwinkle has more money on hand, and she's feeling the heat, because I think Lightfoot is the favorite at this juncture. So does John Cass, as he writes about in the Tribune today in his column. Lightfoot better get some scratch together and get up on the air, because the one way she could lose this, I think, is if she does allow superior resources in these early stages to define her. The same way happened 4 years ago, if you remember. Rahm gets embarrassed, pushed to a runoff by Chewy, but then he's immediately on the air. He's organized. He puts the cardigan sweater on. He apologized. Right. He starts to define Chewy as not, essentially not qualified for the job, and he coasts to re-election. That's what Lori Lightfoot has to guard against.
And keep in mind, this is her first time ever running for an election, and she only put one ad out, Dan, and that was in like the 24th hour. When she walks in the room with her suit on and turns on the light. But she, out yesterday campaigning, said she's not affiliated with Ed Burke or Joe Barrios or anyone else who really represents the old corrupt Chicago way. So, yes, they're both progressives, but she was trying to distance herself, calling herself an independent reform candidate.
Well, she really isn't affiliated with those individuals, and Tony Preckwinkle is. And so that is an important point of contrast for her with a city, I think, that is looking for new leadership. Except in the 14th Ward, of course.
Well, the big thing, too, though, they need they're both fighting for Willie Wilson's voters. They don't care about Bill Daley's endorsement, but they're both going to meet with him, or he's going to meet with both of them and decide who he's going to support.
And who are the police going to support? I would say my understanding, at least, is the enthusiasm for either woman is muted. Yeah. To be fair, Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle, as it pertains to rank-and-file police officers, but one of them is going to be mayor, so where's the FOP going to come down? For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by Kevin Graham, who is the president of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police. Kevin, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I thought I was talking about something else, but this is fine. That's what can I answer for you?
Well, yeah, we got to ask you about the mayor's race, and so how do you handicap Preckwinkle versus Lightfoot from a police perspective?
Well, certainly both of them have been highly critical of the police, and as I've said for a long time, the criticism really should be landing on the politicians that got the police department into a mess by not having enough manpower, closing police stations, and so on. It's going to be interesting to see how they want to try and protect the city going forward, because certainly we do have some concerns. I think that President Preckwinkle has to take some responsibility for all the people that have been let out on home monitoring and no or low bonds that have increased the crime in this city. And so she's certainly going to have to take some criticisms on that.
What kind of job do you think Lori Lightfoot did as president of the Chicago Police Board?
Well, we had some concerns because we felt that police officers you went in front of the board and they found you guilty. They didn't get much of a chance to put on a defense. Certainly, we've done what we could to try and change that. And since I took over as president of FOP, and we've had some different people in there representing our officers, and I think we've done a very good job of it. Certainly, she's going to have to explain how she came up with the code of silence, but which I said I have no idea. But I will say that I think that Lightfoot is more willing to discuss the issues than Preckwinkle.
Yeah, right. And you mentioned, you've sort of mentioned implicitly Kim Fox over there in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and how that's going. I would think, and I would hope, and I'm sure this will be part of your conversation, that Lightfoot in particular would understand that when police don't feel like they have the civilian political authorities behind them, you have a violence spiral out of control as it has in Chicago under Rahm Emanuel's tenure. And so, as a mayor, you don't want to preside over that. And one of the key pieces is that civilian political authority, frontline police officers, they need to have each other's backs. That doesn't mean you excuse misconduct, but as a general rule, for the purposes of keeping the peace, you need to be working in concert with one another.
You hit the nail on the head. The Chicago police officers, the men and women that go out there every day and night, do their very best to protect the people of the city of Chicago. And they need the support from City Hall and from the police department to make sure that they are going to have their backs. And so far, the politicians have not been doing that. And so we're certainly hoping whoever the next mayor is going to be supporting the police. We have never shied away from additional training, from a new police academy, from some changes that would make the police department a better place and make the city a safer place. But we do need the support of City Hall and the mayor, and so I think that's going to be critical. And I'm interested to hear how each of them are going to do that.
How did you receive some of the upsets in the aldermanic races? The John Arenas and the Joe Moores and the Proco Joe Morenos that went down.
Jim Gardner is a very good man. I think he is going to represent that ward very well. The outgoing John Arena was very confrontational with both police and fire, and did not want to listen to the people in his community. So I'm very happy that Mr. Gardner is going to be in there. Hopefully, and I'm sure he will, representing first responders well, making sure that we get the equipment out of the city that we need to do the job, because at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that this city is safe and that people feel comfortable in this city. We believe that's going to attract business, and it's going to eventually do well for the city economically. We certainly believe that having some of these upsets will help the first responders.
Yeah, just on that topic, with Gardner defeating Arena in the 45th Ward, Northwest Side, this exchange that was made public on Facebook between John Garrido, who's a Chicago police officer, ran against Arena twice, lost. This is speaking to what you were describing as John Arena's confrontational style. John Arena saying to John Garrido, "Good luck collecting your pension, 20% funded. Go write me your property tax check." That's an interesting posture for a sitting alderman to take, to be essentially suggesting to a police officer, you're not going to get your pension, it's 20% funded, and go pound sand. Oh, and write me a property tax check while you're pounding sand. It's remarkable, and I bring this up not only so that Arena's held to account for it, but number two, so residents of the 45th Ward are properly embarrassed by electing him twice.
Well, you know what, and I'm glad now we're moving on to somebody who knows what the issues are and can find solutions. The FOP has introduced a bill down in Springfield that talks about sports betting and for gaming positions, such as video poker, and if those come into the city of Chicago, that the funds from those, the profits from those, would go into the police and fire fund. So, we're already looking down the road. Even though there is a required contribution by the city, we want to make sure that the city is solvent. We're looking down the road. We have been at the table trying to find solutions, and I don't think the FOP really gets the credit for trying to find solutions that the city has problems to.
Speaking of problems, one that went away for the time being, Jussie Smollett and his alleged hoax. A lot of manpower was spent on that case. Do you think he should pay restitution?
Oh, you know what? Well, first of all, he has to be found guilty, all right? And, we are not trying to change the courts, but everything I have heard and seen leads to me to believe that it was a hoax and that, yes, he should be required to pay. These detectives, I can't say enough about what a thorough job the detectives did to try and find every single piece of evidence, no matter where it led, whether it proved Mr. Smollett's claims or it disproved them. These detectives did an outstanding job, and the responding officers, to try and find a solution and a legitimate one. And so I give him a lot of credit. Yes, he should be required to pay for all the man hours that were put into it.
How do you think Eddie Johnson handled the matter from a leadership perspective?
I got to tell you, I thought it was one of his best press conferences ever.
Me too.
He accurately described how outraged he was because the things that Mr. Smollett was making accusations about diminishes those people who are legitimately attacked, and that we have to spend resources on to try and find the perpetrators on that. And when we diminish whatever crime because of a hoax, it diminishes all the victims. And I got to tell you, after being a police officer for more than 30 years, you remember those victims and how those crimes affected them. And so, it's a disservice to all the victims. It really is.
What do you say though to Carmia Tang? We're going to have her on at 7:35 this morning. Carmia Tang wrote an op-ed. She's the mother of Jeremy Alexander Tang, who was shot and killed in Chicago in 2017. The person who murdered her son has not been brought to justice, and she took out after the resources that were dedicated to the Smollett case as compared to those dedicated to her son and other victims of violent crimes, including homicides. What do you say to her from a police perspective?
Well, I did specifically ask the superintendent if any resources were diverted from investigating homicides in the city to work on the Smollett case, and he emphatically said no. These were other resources. I believe that we did spend a lot on overtime on this case, on the Smollett case. I got to tell you, it's heartbreaking when people have loved ones who are murdered in this city, and that the offenders are not brought to justice. My heart goes out to all of the victims because that's hard. Those are somebody's children, and the pain is never going to go away for them. And certainly we have to do whatever we can. Unfortunately, we had reduced the detective division considerably over the last several years, and we are just now building it back up. And so hopefully we can not only get to the crimes that are occurring on a daily basis, but go back and try and solve some of the crimes that have occurred 1 or 2 years ago as well. He
is Kevin Graham. He's the president of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police, Chicago FOP. Kevin, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You too.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app